A lonely rancher came only to buy a cow, until a child whispered, "Today is my mother's last day." His hoverbike hummed beneath him, its thrusters pushing him steadily toward a small settlement far on the horizon. He had come for only one reason: to buy a cow. Not just any cow, of course, but a genetically engineered animal capable of surviving the harsh Martian terrain, producing enough milk to feed even the smallest outpost community. Eli had been a rancher all his life. On Earth, he had tended cattle under wide blue skies and green fields, but here on Mars, everything was different. The air was thin, the soil dry and rocky, and the nights were cold enough to freeze a man in his sleep. Most of the settlers had adapted to the alien world by living in domes and using machines to grow food. But Eli liked his solitude. He enjoyed working alone, talking only to his animals and the wind. People, he found, were unpredictable. As he neared the outpost, a cluster of metal domes came into view, connected by narrow walkways and small landing pads. Alien traders moved about, their shapes strange and unfamiliar, their voices a mix of harsh clicks and soft whistles. Humans in bulky protective suits haggled over goods, and robots rolled past, carrying crates of supplies. The noise was a mixture of languages, mechanical beeps, and the low rumble of hover vehicles. Eli slowed his bike and parked it beside a dome labeled Interstellar Livestock Exchange. He adjusted his wide-brimmed hat and stepped down onto the metal walkway. His boots clanged against the plates, a sound that made him feel, oddly, less alone. He had come only to purchase a cow, nothing more. No distractions, no complications. A simple transaction, then a ride back to his small Martian ranch, where the red dust stretched endlessly in every direction. But as he passed a cluster of traders, something unusual caught his eye. A small figure, pale-skinned and thin, barely bigger than a basket of supplies, was standing near the edge of the walkway. The child looked fragile, her hair tangled and eyes wide, staring at Eli as if she had been waiting for him. She tugged at his sleeve gently, almost shyly. "Sir," she whispered, "today is my mother's last day." Eli froze. The words hung in the air like a sudden storm, and for a moment he thought he had misheard her. "Excuse me," he asked, leaning closer. The child repeated the words softly, almost like a secret. "Today is my mother's last day." Eli's hand instinctively went to the strap of his bag, where he carried a few personal tools and a small blaster for emergencies. But he did not feel fear. Instead, a strange mixture of curiosity and concern pulled at him. He had come for a cow. He had not come for anyone else. And yet in that instant he felt the pull of responsibility. Something human stirred inside him. "Where is she?" Eli asked carefully. The child's eyes flickered with relief. "Follow me," she said, leading him down a narrow path between two domes. Eli noticed how small she was, how fragile her steps seemed against the metallic flooring. She moved quickly, though, and despite his size and years of experience, he had to jog a little to keep up. They arrived at a semidome at the far edge of the settlement. The child hesitated before knocking lightly on the door. From inside came the faint hiss of machinery and a soft, uneven breathing. "Mom," the child called, "someone's here." The door opened and Eli saw her. She was lying on a simple bed, pale and thin, connected to several tubes and small machines that hissed and beeped quietly. Her hair was streaked with silver, and her eyes, though tired, held sharp clarity. She looked at Eli and smiled faintly, as if she understood something he had not yet grasped. "This is Eli," the child said. He wants to help." Eli cleared his throat, unsure of what to say. I don't know how I can help. I'm just a rancher," the mother finished for him, her voice weak but surprisingly steady. "I know, that is all you came for, isn't it? A cow?" Eli nodded slowly. "Yes, that's all I came for." But he paused, glancing at the child, then at the mother. "Your daughter said today is your last day. What does that mean?" The mother's eyes softened. "I carry a virus," she said simply. A virus from another world. The authorities quarantined us. They say I won't last long. Today is my final day. She coughed softly, then reached out a thin hand toward Eli. I know you did not come for this, but if you can, help my daughter survive. Keep her safe beyond the quarantine line, even if it means defying everyone. Eli's chest tightened. He had lived alone for decades on Earth and now on Mars, and had never been asked to care for anyone in such a direct, urgent way. And yet, something deep inside him responded. He thought of his own daughter left behind on Earth years ago, and the pain of missed opportunities and distant memories pressed against his heart. I can try, Eli said, his voice low but firm. The mother's lips curved into a faint smile. That is all I ask. The child, Mara, clutched his arm. Please, she whispered. We have nowhere else to go. Eli looked around the room. The machines hummed, the red dust outside the dome glowed in the dim light of the Martian sky, and a feeling he had long ignored began to grow. It was not fear, nor obligation. It was human determination. Humans survived not because the universe was fair, but because they adapted, learned, and cared. And now, he would carry that determination into something bigger than himself. He glanced down at Mara and nodded. We'll leave soon, but we have to be careful. The quarantine drones, they won't let us leave easily. Mara's small hand squeezed his. She nodded, trusting him completely, as only a child can. Eli felt the weight of that trust and understood that his life had shifted in a single moment. He had come for a cow, a simple purchase. Now, he was responsible for saving a child and her mother's last wishes. The mother spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. Remember, Eli, humans survive when they care for each other. That is our greatest strength. Eli nodded again, looking out the semidome's window at the endless Martian plains. Somewhere beyond the horizon lay safety, and perhaps even hope. Somewhere he would find a way to keep his promise. For now, though, all he could do was prepare. Prepare for the journey, prepare for the dangers, and prepare for the choices that would define them all. The desert stretched endlessly, but so did human determination. And Eli Tarrant, lonely rancher of Mars, had just discovered a new reason to survive. The sun hung low above the Martian plains, casting long shadows across the settlement. Eli Tarrant had never moved so carefully in his life. He and Mara, the pale, fragile child, had spent the last hour preparing for what could only be called an escape. Their plan was simple in words, terrifying in reality. Leave the quarantine zone and take Mara's mother to safety beyond the drones and patrols. Eli had moved boxes, secured his small pack, and checked his tools. He had always been a solitary man, and now the weight of responsibility pressed on him in a way he had never known. This was not about cattle or survival alone. This was about life, about humanity in its rawest, most delicate form. Mara watched him silently, her small eyes wide, filled with both fear and hope. Will it hurt her? Mara asked quietly, tugging at his sleeve. Eli shook his head. No, not if we move carefully. The machines are keeping her alive, but they cannot stop time. We have to make this count. Mara nodded, gripping her mother's hand as the mother rested quietly on the bed, eyes half closed but alert. She seemed peaceful, though her body trembled with every shallow breath. Eli could not ignore the reality of her fragility. One wrong move, one misstep, and everything could be lost. He had learned long ago that survival required more than strength. It required thinking, patience, and understanding. And now, all of that had to be applied to protect someone far weaker than himself. Eli's hands, calloused from years of tending cattle and repairing machines, moved gently as he disconnected a few tubes and secured portable oxygen and nutrient supplies into a small pack. He worked slowly, deliberately, aware that any sudden motion could alarm the monitoring system. Mara leaned close. Can she breathe okay? She will, Eli reassured her. We just have to move fast and smart. No sudden moves, no noise, and we stay in the shadows as much as possible. The mother, sensing their preparation, spoke softly. Her voice was weak, barely above a whisper, yet it carried authority. Eli, remember. Humans survive not because the universe is kind, but because they adapt, because they care for each other. You must care for my daughter, and she must learn to care for herself. Eli nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. I will, he said firmly. They left the semidome at dusk, moving through narrow corridors between the main domes of the settlement. The shadows were long, and the artificial lights of the outpost cast strange, distorted shapes on the metallic walkways. Quarantine drones hovered above, their sensors scanning for any unauthorized movement. One flash of light, one signal, and alarms would ring throughout the entire outpost. Eli's heart pounded, but he focused. He guided Mara, then her mother, carefully through side corridors and storage areas that were less monitored. The air smelled faintly of metal and dust, and the low hum of machines filled the silence. Every sound seemed amplified in the quiet, empty spaces between the domes. As they moved, Mara asked questions softly. Why can't the authorities help us? Why is she dying? Eli hesitated. There were no simple answers. Some things, some illnesses, they are too fast for their machines. They try to protect everyone else, but sometimes the cost is the one person you love. That's why we have to be careful. That's why we have to leave. Mara's small hand gripped his tightly. I don't want to leave her. You won't leave her, Eli said, meeting her gaze. Not while I'm alive. They reached a narrow airlock that led to the outer plains. Eli inspected the area carefully. The drones were distant, hovering above the main domes, their lights scanning methodically. He carried the mother first, carefully supporting her weight against his broad shoulders, while Mara followed close behind. Every step was a careful balance, every sound a potential danger. Outside, the Martian wind blew cold and sharp. Red dust swirled around their boots, stinging their faces and making their eyes water. Eli adjusted the mother's portable life support pack, making sure the oxygen and nutrients flowed steadily. Mara ran alongside him, keeping pace despite her small frame. For a long time, they walked in silence, broken only by the soft hiss of the life support system and the crunch of dust beneath their boots. Eli could feel the enormity of the moment pressing down on him. This was not a small thing. This was a life or death decision, and failure was not an option. As they moved, Eli reflected on human resilience. Humans were not the fastest, not the strongest, and certainly not the most technologically advanced compared to some alien species he had encountered. But humans adapted, learned, and survived in ways no machine or alien mind could predict. They improvised, created, and cared for each other. That was what had allowed them to spread across the stars, to turn barren planets into homes, and to survive when everything seemed against them. He looked down at Mara, her small face set with determination, and realized that the child had already begun to learn this lesson. She had courage he could not have expected, and in that courage, he found hope. Hours passed as they moved across the Martian plains. The sky darkened, and distant stars began to pierce the dusty twilight. Eli found a small ridge where they could rest without being easily seen by drones or other patrols. He carefully set the mother down and checked the life support systems again, making sure everything was secure. Mara sat beside her mother, brushing back a strand of tangled hair. Will she live? She asked quietly. She will live as long as we keep moving, as long as we don't give up, Eli said. His voice carried more certainty than he felt, but he needed to give them both hope. Humans survive when they refuse to give up, when they adapt and fight for each other. The mother opened her eyes slightly and smiled, her hand reaching out to touch Mara's cheek. Eli, you are teaching her more than survival. You are teaching her what it means to be human. Eli looked at the two of them, feeling a deep, unfamiliar warmth in his chest. For decades he had lived alone, trusting no one and relying only on himself. Now, in this quiet, dangerous moment on a foreign world, he realized that survival was about more than just endurance. It was about connection, compassion, and courage. Suddenly, the faint hum of a drone broke the silence. Eli's heart skipped a beat. He quickly scanned the horizon. A patrol drone moved slowly across the plains, its red sensors sweeping methodically. He whispered, "Stay low, stay quiet." Mara ducked beside her mother, covering her small face with her hands. Eli moved in front of them, shielding them from view as the drone passed. He could feel his pulse racing, but his mind stayed sharp. Years of ranching and survival had taught him one thing: panic was the enemy. Focus was the key. Once the drone moved out of sight, Eli allowed himself a brief moment to breathe. "We're not out of danger yet," he said, "but we are moving in the right direction. The farther we go, the safer we will be." They rested briefly, the mother leaning weakly against Mara, who held her hand tightly. Eli's eyes swept the horizon. In the distance, he could see the faint glow of abandoned structures, old terraforming stations and research outposts, long unused but potentially safe. It would be a long journey, and they would face more dangers along the way, but it was a start. Mara looked up at him with a mixture of fear and determination. "Can we make it there?" Eli smiled faintly, the lines of his face creasing with both worry and hope. "Yes, humans survive when they try, and I promise we will try." As they moved again into the night, Eli reflected on the journey ahead. This was not just about escaping a quarantine or saving a life. It was about proving something to himself, to Mara, and to the universe, that humanity, even alone, even small and fragile, could endure, could adapt, could care, could survive. And in that moment, under the alien stars of Mars, Eli Tarrin realized that the journey of survival was also the journey of humanity itself, determined, resourceful, and never giving up, no matter the odds. They walked through the cold Martian night, guided only by the faint glimmer of distant lights and the determination in their hearts. Each step was a victory, each breath a triumph, and each moment a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Eli Tarrin led Mara and her mother carefully across the barren Martian plains. The night was cold, with the wind carrying sharp grains of red dust that cut at their faces. The glow of distant domes faded behind them, and only the faint stars above lit their path. Each step carried risk. The quarantine drones were everywhere, and the slightest misstep could set off alarms. The mother rested weakly on Eli's shoulder, her breathing steady thanks to the portable life support system he had rigged. Mara ran alongside them, small and determined, her hand clutching her mother's. Despite her size, she kept pace, her determination stronger than fear. Eli couldn't help but feel a swell of admiration for the child. Humans, he thought, survived not because they were the strongest, but because they refused to give up, because they cared for each other. As they moved further from the settlement, the terrain became rougher. Rocky ridges and deep, dry gullies forced Eli to slow his pace. He had always been used to open plains on Earth, but Mars was a different world entirely. Every hill, every ridge could hide danger. He scanned the horizon constantly, wary of the patrol drones' glowing red sensors. "This way," Eli whispered, pointing toward a faint ridge in the distance. "If we can reach that ridge, we can rest for a while without being seen." Mara glanced at the ridge, then back at him. "Will she be okay?" Eli nodded, though his mind was full of doubts. "She will be okay if we keep moving, but we have to be smart, quiet, careful." The ridge loomed closer, but as they climbed, Eli noticed movement in the distance, a drone, its red light sweeping methodically across the plains. He pressed his mother down into a shallow depression in the rock, covering her with his body. Mara crouched low beside them, trembling. Eli whispered, "Stay very still, don't move." The drone passed slowly, scanning the area, its sensors searching for any sign of life. Eli's heart pounded, but he kept calm. He knew panic could ruin everything. After what felt like an eternity, the drone moved out of sight. Eli exhaled quietly and adjusted the mother's portable life support pack. "We can move now," he said softly. "Keep close." They continued, the rough terrain slowing their progress. Eli noticed something strange in the distance, what looked like a metallic glow against the red rock. He squinted, then realized it was an abandoned research station. It had been deserted for decades, likely a relic of early Martian colonization efforts. "That's our chance," Eli said, pointing toward it. "If we can reach that station, we can rest safely for a while." Mara's eyes widened. "Do you think it's safe?" Eli smiled faintly. "Safe enough, better than staying out here." As they approached the station, Eli's mind raced. He had no idea what dangers might be inside, but he knew one thing: they had to keep moving. The mother's condition was fragile, and every hour outside the settlement increased the risk. Inside the station, the air was cold and still. Dust covered the floor and broken machinery lay scattered across the room. Eli quickly checked the life support pack and found a small storage room where they could rest. He carefully laid the mother down on an old, padded bench and adjusted her tubes. "You'll be safe here for a while," he told her. "We'll rest, then continue in the morning." Mara sat beside her mother, brushing back her hair and holding her hand. "Will we make it?" she whispered. Eli knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Yes, we will make it. Humans survive when they try, when they refuse to give up. And we are going to keep trying." That night, Eli kept watch while Mara slept beside her mother. He thought about the journey ahead, the rough plains, the drones, the unknown dangers, and he thought about humans. Humans survived not because the universe was kind, but because they adapted, because they cared, because they refused to give up. In the morning, the Martian sun rose, casting a weak red glow across the plains. Eli packed up their supplies and prepared to move again. The journey was far from over. They would need water, food, and shelter as they traveled toward the next safe zone, but Eli was confident in their abilities. "We have to keep moving," he said to Mara. "The farther we go, the safer we will be." Mara nodded, her small hand clutching her mother's. "I'm ready," she said. As they left the station, Eli noticed signs of Martian wildlife, small, hardy creatures that had adapted to the harsh environment. It reminded him that life, no matter how fragile, always found a way to survive. Humans were no different. They walked for hours, navigating rocky terrain and avoiding patrols. Eli taught Mara how to move quietly, how to use the rocks for cover, and how to read the wind and the land for signs of danger. She listened carefully, her small face set with determination. By mid-afternoon, they reached a small canyon that offered temporary shelter. Eli set up a makeshift camp using tarps and supplies from his pack. The mother rested on a padded surface, and Mara helped Eli set up the small portable life support units. "This canyon will keep us safe for the night," Eli said. "But we must leave before the drones return in the morning." As the sun set, Eli looked out over the Martian plains. The red dust shimmered in the fading light and the stars began to appear. He felt a strange sense of peace. Despite the danger, despite the uncertainty, there was hope. Humans survived not because the universe was easy, but because they cared, because they adapted, and because they never gave up. That night, Eli told Mara stories of Earth, of green fields and wide skies, of cattle grazing under the sun. He spoke of the lessons he had learned as a rancher: patience, observation, and care. Mara listened, her small hand gripping his tightly, and for the first time since they had begun their journey, she smiled. The mother stirred, her weak voice cutting through the quiet night. "Eli, you are teaching her more than survival. You are teaching her to be human." Eli nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "That's what we have to do," he said softly. "We survive not because the universe is kind, but because we care for each other, and we keep going." As the night deepened, the three of them huddled together for warmth. The wind howled outside the canyon, but inside there was safety. For the first time in days, Eli allowed himself to rest, though his eyes remained alert. The journey was far from over and dangers still lay ahead. But he had faith in humanity's resilience, in Mara's courage, and in the fragile strength of the mother he had vowed to protect. The next morning, they prepared to continue. Eli checked the life support systems, secured their supplies, and led them out of the canyon. The Martian sun rose again, painting the plains in a deep red hue. The drones would be patrolling soon, but Eli was ready. He had learned to move with caution, to observe the land, and to adapt to every challenge. As they walked, Mara asked softly, "Will we ever be safe?" Eli looked at her, then at her mother, and smiled faintly. "We will be safe," he said. "Not because the universe will protect us, but because we will protect each other. That is what humans do." The three of them moved across the plains, a small band of resilience against a harsh world. Each step was a victory, each breath a triumph. And with every moment, Eli Tarrin realized something profound. Survival was not just about enduring the universe, it was about humanity itself. Humans survived not because they were the strongest, the fastest, or the most advanced. Humans survived because they cared, because they adapted, because they refused to give up, even when the odds seemed impossible. And Eli, lonely rancher of Mars, had just begun to see what it truly meant to be human. The Martian plains stretched endlessly before them, jagged rocks casting long shadows in the dim light of dawn. Eli Tarrin moved carefully, carrying Mara's mother on his broad shoulders while Mara ran alongside, her small feet kicking up red dust with each determined step. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on Eli's shoulders, but he felt an unusual warmth in his chest, a sense of purpose he had not known in decades of solitude. Hours passed as they traversed the barren landscape. The wind whispered across the plains, sharp and cold, and the faint hum of distant drones reminded them that the settlement was not far behind. Eli's eyes scanned constantly, trained to spot danger, to read the subtle signs of movement or reflection that could signal a drone patrol. Mara stayed close, her small hands clutching the straps of her mother's portable life support pack. "This way," Eli said softly, pointing toward a distant metallic glimmer among the rocks. "That's our best chance for shelter." Mara's eyes widened with hope. "Do you think it's safe?" Eli squatted, meeting her gaze. "Safe enough. It's old, abandoned, but it will keep us hidden from the drones. And it has walls, roofs, and supplies. That's more than we have right now." They approached cautiously, careful not to make noise. The structure was an old terraforming station, long forgotten, a relic of humanity's first attempts to settle Mars. Its walls were scratched and dented, and patches of rust clung stubbornly to the metal surfaces. Yet despite its age, it promised something they had not felt in days: safety. Eli pried open the entrance, careful not to make a sound. The inside smelled faintly of dust and metal, and broken machinery lay scattered across the floor. He quickly surveyed the space and found a small control room that could serve as a temporary shelter. He set Mara's mother down on a padded bench, adjusting her tubes and portable life support system. "You'll be safe here for a while," he said gently. "We can rest, eat, and plan the next steps." Mara knelt beside her mother, brushing back her hair and holding her hand. "Will we be okay?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Eli looked at her, then at the mother, and nodded. "Yes. Humans survive when they try, when they adapt, and when they care for each other. And we are going to keep trying." The mother's weak smile returned. "You are teaching her more than survival, Eli," she said softly. "You are teaching her what it means to be human." Eli felt a lump in his throat. He had lived alone for decades, relying only on himself and the few animals he cared for. Now, in this quiet, abandoned station on a distant planet, he realized the truth of her words. Humans survived not because the universe was kind, but because they cared, because they adapted, because they refused to give up. Over the next few hours, Eli explored the station. Broken panels and dusty control consoles littered the rooms, but he found something unexpected. A small hydroponics chamber still functional, though limited. A few resilient plants clung to life, and tiny automated systems maintained their growth. Eli's eyes brightened. With careful work, he could restore this chamber to provide fresh vegetables and water filtration, enough to sustain them for weeks if needed. "This could help us survive," Eli said aloud, more to himself than to the others. "If we work carefully, we can make this place a home for a while." Mara's face lit up with curiosity. "Can I help?" she asked eagerly. Eli smiled, feeling a rare sense of joy. "Yes, I'll show you. Humans survive by learning and working together. You'll learn how to care for plants, manage water, and even help with small repairs." The rest of the day was spent in cautious activity. Eli taught Mara how to check the life support systems, how to monitor her mother's oxygen and nutrient levels, and how to use the small tools he carried to adjust machinery. Mara absorbed everything with determination, her small hands moving carefully, her mind sharp and focused. By evening, the mother rested quietly, her breathing steady. Eli and Mara shared a modest meal of preserved rations and water, eating in silence as the Martian wind howled outside. The station creaked under the force of the wind, but inside there was safety, and for the first time in days, a sense of calm. As night fell, Eli taught Mara about observation and patience. "Humans survive not because they fight blindly," he explained. "We survive because we watch, we plan, we adapt. We care for each other and ourselves. That is our strength." Mara listened intently, her small hand clutching her mother's. "I want to be strong like you," she whispered. Eli knelt beside her. "You already are. Strength isn't just about muscle or speed. It's about courage, patience, and care. And you have all of those." The mother stirred and smiled faintly. "She will be ready for the world thanks to you," she said, her voice weak but filled with gratitude. Over the next few days, Eli worked tirelessly to restore the station. He repaired broken systems, cleaned the hydroponics chamber, and rerouted power to ensure continuous life support. Mara helped eagerly, learning quickly and proving herself capable of handling difficult tasks. The mother, though weak, offered guidance, teaching Mara small lessons about life, compassion, and the importance of hope. One morning, as the sun rose over the red plains, Eli stood at the station's observation window, looking out at the vast, empty landscape. "We are safe here," he said softly, "for now, but we cannot stay forever. We will need to move again eventually, toward a better place, a world where your mother can recover and you can grow safely." Mara joined him at the window, her small hand slipping into his. "I'm ready," she said quietly. Eli smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride and responsibility. "Good. Humans survive when they try, when they refuse to give up, and when they care. That's what we're doing." That afternoon, Eli discovered an old communication terminal in the control room. Dust covered the screen, but with careful repairs, he managed to bring it online. To his surprise, the terminal still had a weak connection to the outer network. He couldn't reach the settlement, authorities would block any signals, but he could send a short, encrypted message to distant human colonies. "This could help us," Eli said to Mara. "If we can find help, we can make a real home here beyond the reach of the drones and the quarantine." Mara's eyes shone with excitement. "Then we can stay together," Eli nodded. "Yes, we will stay together, and we will make this a safe place for as long as we need." The days passed, and the station slowly became a sanctuary. Eli and Mara cared for the mother, who, despite her weakened state, showed small signs of improvement. She smiled more often, spoke more clearly, and even laughed softly when Mara shared stories of her adventures across the Martian plains. Eli reflected on the resilience of humans. Despite the harshness of the universe, despite isolation and danger, humans adapted. They used their minds, their compassion, and their courage to survive. He thought of Earth, of wide fields and green skies, and realized that the same principles applied here, on a distant planet, among red dust and rocky plains. One evening, as the three of them sat together in the control room, the mother reached out to Eli. "You have done more than I could have hoped," she said. "You have given Mara hope, safety, and the chance to learn what it means to be human. That is a legacy far greater than survival." Eli felt a lump in his throat. "We're just doing what humans do," he said softly. "We care, we adapt, we keep going." The mother smiled faintly, her hand resting on Mara's. "And that will be enough." That night, Eli stood at the station's observation window again, looking out at the endless Martian plains. The stars above were bright and clear, untouched by city lights, and the wind whispered across the rocks. He thought of the journey ahead, of the dangers still lurking, but he also thought of hope, courage, and the human spirit. In the quiet of the abandoned station, Eli Taryn, Mara, and her mother had found more than shelter. They had found purpose, connection, and a testament to what humanity could achieve, even in the harshest of worlds. And as he watched the stars, Eli knew that no matter what lay ahead, humans would survive. They always did. The first light of dawn crept over the Martian horizon, turning the plains into a sea of red and gold. Eli Taryn stood outside the abandoned terraforming station, adjusting the portable life support packs and checking the small hydroponics chamber. Mara ran around him, her small laughter echoing softly in the quiet morning. It was a rare moment of peace, and Eli cherished it, knowing it might not last long. Inside, Mara's mother rested quietly. Her breathing was shallow but steady, the faint beeping of the life support units providing a rhythm to the morning. Eli had been awake most of the night, monitoring her systems and ensuring everything functioned properly. Despite their careful planning and the temporary safety of the station, he could not shake the awareness that time was limited. "Eli," Mara whispered, coming to stand beside him, "do you think she'll be okay today?" Eli put a hand on her small shoulder, kneeling down to meet her gaze. "We've done everything we can, Mara, and we'll keep doing it. Humans survive when they refuse to give up. We care for each other. That is our strength." Mara nodded, her eyes bright with determination. "I want to help. I want to do everything I can." Eli smiled faintly, his heart warmed by her courage. "Then you will. Humans survive by learning, by working together, and by caring. You are already learning that, and I'm proud of you." Inside, the mother stirred and looked at Mara with a faint smile. "Eli," she said softly, "you've done more than I could have hoped. You've given her a chance to survive, to learn, and to grow." Eli nodded. "We're in this together, that's what humans do. We care for each other and we never give up." The mother's eyes softened as she reached out a trembling hand toward Mara. "My child, my dear Mara, you are brave. You are strong. You have learned the most important lesson of all, how to care. That will carry you farther than any technology, any plan, or any weapon. Humanity lives in hearts like yours." Mara leaned down, pressing her cheek against her mother's frail hand. Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice was steady. "I'll be brave, Mom. I promise. I'll keep going." Eli felt a lump in his throat. He had seen courage before, yes, in humans and in animals, but this was different. This was pure, unshakable courage born of love and connection. Mara's small hands, her determined heart, reminded him why humans had survived countless worlds and countless dangers. It was not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they cared, and because they never stopped trying. Hours passed and the mother grew weaker. Eli and Mara stayed close, monitoring her every breath, adjusting the life support system, and offering words of comfort. Eli taught Mara how to check the systems, how to read the monitors, and how to make small adjustments. She absorbed every lesson, her hands steady and precise. Even in the face of loss, she was learning resilience, courage, and the value of knowledge. As the afternoon sun dipped low, painting the plains with fiery reds and oranges, the mother's breathing slowed. Eli held her hand while Mara pressed close to her side. The mother's voice was faint, but she spoke clearly. "Ili Mara, remember this," she whispered. "Humans survive because we care, because we adapt, because we refuse to give up. Take this lesson and carry it into the universe." Mara's tears fell freely now, but she did not waver. "I will, Mom. I'll keep going, I promise." The mother smiled faintly, her eyes closing as she breathed her last. Eli and Mara remained by her side, silent but united, their hearts heavy yet full of purpose. In that moment, Eli felt the weight of the human spirit, the unyielding determination to survive, adapt, and care, even in the harshest conditions. After a long, quiet moment, Eli spoke softly. "She's gone, Mara, but we keep going, that's what she would want." Mara nodded, wiping her tears, her small face set with determination. "We will, Eli, we'll keep going, we'll survive." Eli took a deep breath and looked out across the Martian plains. The red dust shimmered in the fading light, and the stars began to appear, bright and clear above them. Somewhere beyond the horizon lay distant worlds, habitable planets where humans had settled. Somewhere beyond the stars, Mara could grow, learn, and thrive, and Eli would help her reach them. In the days that followed, Eli and Mara prepared to leave the station. He repaired the remaining systems, secured the life support packs, and ensured the hydroponics chamber could sustain them during their journey. Mara helped eagerly, her small hands moving quickly, her mind sharp and focused. The bond between them had grown strong, built on trust, courage, and shared purpose. Finally, the day came when they were ready to leave. Eli hoisted the mother's small memorial marker, a simple plaque with her name and a brief message of hope, and placed it near the station's entrance. "She will be remembered," he said softly. "Her courage, her love, it will guide us." Mara knelt beside the marker, placing her hand on it. "I'll remember, Mom. I'll never forget." Eli adjusted their supplies and checked the hoverbike. They had everything they needed: food, water, life support packs, and a small cow-like creature Eli had purchased earlier to help Mara learn care and responsibility. It was a genetically engineered animal, resilient and adaptive, capable of surviving in the harsh Martian terrain. Eli smiled faintly, knowing that even in this alien world life persisted. Human ingenuity and compassion could make it thrive. "Ready, Mara?" Eli asked. Mara nodded, climbing onto the small hoverbike beside him. The cow-like creature trotted beside them, its mechanical sensors scanning the terrain. Eli took a deep breath and engaged the thrusters, lifting smoothly into the Martian air. They rose above the plains, the red dust swirling below them, and headed toward the distant horizon. As they traveled, Eli taught Mara how to navigate, how to read the land and the stars, and how to care for their animal companion. She absorbed every lesson, her mind sharp and her heart courageous. Eli marveled at the child's resilience, how she had grown from fear and fragility into determination and hope. Night fell as they traveled, the stars above bright and countless. Eli reflected on humanity's strength. Humans survived not because they were perfect, but because they cared, because they adapted, because they refused to give up even when the universe seemed against them. Mara, small and brave, was living proof of that truth. Days passed as they journeyed across the Martian plains, then into safer valleys, and finally toward the edge of the human-colonized territories. Along the way, they faced challenges: rocky terrain, mechanical failures, and the constant vigilance required to avoid patrols. Yet with every challenge, Mara learned, adapted, and grew stronger. Finally, they reached a safe zone, a small colony on the outskirts of a habitable region. Eli guided Mara off the hoverbike and introduced her to the colony's leaders, explaining their journey, their losses, and their purpose. Mara stood tall, her small frame filled with courage, and the colony welcomed them with open arms. Eli watched her closely, pride swelling in his chest. She had survived, adapted, and learned the most important lesson of all. Humanity lived in connection, courage, and care. The mother's legacy had endured through Mara, and Eli knew that she would carry it forward across the stars. As the sun set over the new colony, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Eli stood with Mara at the edge of the settlement. The cow-like creature grazed nearby, adapting quickly to the new environment. Mara looked up at Eli, her eyes bright and determined. "Thank you, Eli," she said softly, "for everything." Eli smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "No, Mara, thank you. You taught me something too. Humans survive not because we are alone, but because we care, because we adapt, and because we never stop trying. That is our strength." Mara nodded, understanding fully now. Together they watched the stars emerge, shining brightly in the clear sky. The universe was vast, harsh, and often unforgiving, but humanity had a place within it, a place built on courage, compassion, and determination. And Eli Tarrant, lonely rancher who had once come only to buy a cow, realized that he had been part of something far greater. He had witnessed the strength of the human spirit, the courage of a child, and the enduring legacy of love and care. Humanity would continue, even in the farthest reaches of space, because people like Mara and countless others refused to give up. With the stars above them and the colony ahead, Eli and Mara set their sights on the future, a future full of possibilities, challenges, and hope. And in that moment, Eli knew the truth of what he had always believed. Humans survive, humans endure, and humans thrive, not because the universe is kind, but because humanity itself is strong, compassionate, and unyielding. The journey was far from over, but it had begun anew, and the stars awaited them.